Do you ever consider yourself as a hybrid rockstar?
I mean, technically, because I've done one, I must be.
Yeah.
So therefore, yeah. I think maybe it's the connotation that's attached to it. And maybe that comes from the events, and you see sometimes the people who take it really, really seriously get a bad rep for it through wider like fitness society. Why, I'm not sure, but that can then lead to people cringing out about the name and this association with that. But yeah, I guess I am a hybrid rockstar. I have been a hybrid rockstar.
I'll allow it. I think it's fine. I think you can wear the label, but you aren't just interested in Hyrox. And I think something that I've been impressed with you for is that you train for loads of different events, and you'll have people come in to train for different events. Why is Hyrox what we're talking about at the moment, and what got us to this point?
I think why are we talking about it in? Yeah, I guess it's so popular because the barrier to entry for fitness competition has become lower than it's traditionally ever been. So look at CrossFit events that have traditionally, when you either had a running event where you just did a running race, or you had a CrossFit event, which demands years and years and years of application to aerobic endurance, strength, gymnastics, skill acquisition. So there was nothing really in between for people who wanted to test the fitness. They either were running, or they had to go and do this, or they were just lifting weights. Now there's space created for, I don't want to say more average Joes because that's not fair, but the barrier to entry in terms of skill acquisition is lower, which means more people can test their fitness, which ultimately is a good thing. It means more people are getting into it. There's a place for them to express how they train, which is really nice, because traditionally I don't think we've had that, or we've had the extreme ends of it. We've not had this outlet for expression of fitness in like your general population, which is nice because it means more people get into fitness and people see it and they want to do it, which is ultimately better for everyone.
For sure. And the way that you train for one of these events, as you say, it's not just the running, which we know is good for us. It's not just the weightlifting, which we know is good for us. It's a mix of the two, which you and I would say is probably the best for us.
Yeah.
Why do you think, or is it a why? It's not a why, it's a... Do you think in part the reason why particularly Hyrox is the kind of event du jour of the moment is because it has to be scarce? You can only have so many people running a track in a given amount of time. But, you know, like there are 5 days going on at, is it Cardiff next?
Yeah, it's nuts.
Like 5 days of people running around a track from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening. So
Yeah.
like that's
it's crazy.
Wild.
Have you been to one yet?
I am hopefully on the road to one.
Oh man, honestly, the atmosphere is great, but it is very busy.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of people. And I didn't realise until I did one, the extent to how popular it was. I knew it was popular, but I didn't realise quite how much. There's so many people on the track at the same time, but there's also so many people watching it. So there's a lot of bodies there, and you just have a scan round when you're warming up or just before you go down. There's thousands of people in these arenas, and they're all there to see fitness or partake in fitness. And until you see it, you're like, whoa, okay, this has got legs. This is serious. But yeah, it's an experience, definitely.
For us to get to this point, did CrossFit have to die? What happened with CrossFit? Because that used to be a name, a brand that we'd knock around. You'd see people training CrossFit in the gym, and then it just seemed to disappear, as far as I could see as a commercial PT.
Yeah, I don't think it had to die or anything. I don't think CrossFit was where it was at. I don't think that ever dropped. I think this just upped to it massively.
Okay.
For the reasons we said before, because the barrier to entry was lower. So this becomes so popular, fitness racing, so things like your Hyroxes, your hybrid games, stuff like that. Those endurance-based, running-based events became so popular. I don't think that detracted from any of the CrossFit stuff, because what you see is a lot of the guys or the women who are really good at CrossFit can transition into doing Hyrox and do pretty well because their base conditioning and their base strength is already really high through that CrossFit methodology. So they can transition nicely, whereas the same is not quite true about Hyrox's transitioning into CrossFit style workouts because the demands are different. So if we look at like general CrossFit, you have to have a very high amount of strength base, a good aerobic base, and these are all things that when we go to a Hyrox, which we know are lower skill movements, you can do well at because you've got the physical capabilities to do it. If you then are on the Hyrox side and you're looking to go, and say we were trying to get you to do a CrossFit thing, the movements that could be very high skill and technical, and therefore there's already a barrier. So the same is not quite true the other way around, and which is why I think the popularity in fitness races like Hyrox, etc., are so high, because it allows so many more people to do it. So I don't think CrossFit ever died off. I just think this one took such a large part of the market because it made fitness competitions accessible to far more people, which, again, like we said, is great.
Yeah. What's the difference when you say that people might struggle to go from Hyrox to CrossFit? What are the skills that you need to acquire?
So if we look at what Hyrox is, it's running, and then we've got 8 stations, which are ski, sleds, lunges, the farmer's carry, burpee broad jumps. How many is that? What's the other ones? Wall balls.
That's it, isn't it? There are 2 on sleds.
Yes, sorry, sled push pull. Yeah. So we look at what they all are. They're all endurance based, apart from the wall ball, which is technically maybe a little bit of coordination and skill. We then look at CrossFit, the plethora of movements there. Gymnastics work, so on bars, on rings, learning how to maneuver yourself around that for multiple repetitions. Olympic weightlifting in single rep or heavy rep format, but also in high rep format. So that in itself are two things that takes years and years of application and practice just to be able to do the movement, regardless of how heavy is prescribed on the workout, etc. So naturally, the time dedicated to do that is higher, which is why the barrier to entry was so high, because you didn't have anything in between. So that's the real crux of the transition over, is skill acquisition for one, of these complex movements, which we know just takes time. And not that getting good at Hyrox doesn't take time, it does, 100%. And I'm not bashing it by any means, because the people who compete at the high level there are very, very fit and very good. But they're very good at 8 stations and running. Whereas to be very good at CrossFit, you have to be good at all that, but then you have to be good at all these other things that require high level skill, years and years and years taken to it. So neither's better or worse than the other by any means, and I hope that's not how it comes across. That's just the truth, that these things take longer to learn because they demand more time to them.
I think there's something quite nice about the idea that you could just work on a thing. So as somebody who is getting into coaching it, I know that I'm going to set people completes and PFTs, physical fitness tests, and from there, 12 weeks later, I should hopefully have people improved at what they were weak at. And knowing that, you're not very good at pushing a sled, that's probably my weakness at the moment, just because it's 152 kilos for men's open. I'm not used to pushing like that. I'm used to maybe a chest press or doing some lateral raises. I'm working the same muscles, but I'm not having to grind away against friction for lots and lots of steps, because it's just not me at the moment, So I would need to work on that. But when it comes to things like wall balls, I actually quite like anything that's jumpy, kinetic chain, because I know how to recycle the energy of the ball. Whether I'll like it at the end of 7 stations and 7-8 kilometers of running, I don't know at this point. But I know that I can work on weaknesses, and I could spend a session a week working on that thing and I'll probably improve. If I could do it in 2 sessions, I'll probably improve a little bit quicker. And if you work with a coach, you can figure out these little things and have a set plan to know that you're getting better. And that's addictive as well, I think. When you know where you want to be, you know where you are, and you know how to get there. Like that bit of coaching, and I'm sure we're going to come on to why we love it so much anyway, is incredible. With something like CrossFit, it feels that because it could be anything, it's like doing a PhD relative to doing a GCSE, you know? If you're saying that you could be tested at a different weight, a different volume, like you need to know fitness as a whole in order to do CrossFit. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assumption of it, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How, for people who don't know you, how did you get to this point? How did you get to Compound and your own athleticism?
Right, good question. When I was a kid, I was always very sporty. And I did a lot of sports growing up, a lot of different sports. Found my love of athletics, which was a major one. So I was always athletic as a kid. I think I probably attached part of my personality to that when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. So then when I stopped doing athletics, I actually had a bit of I was at uni, I was like, I'm no longer an athlete. Like that was what I attached to myself. So then kind of I got into the gym and just like your traditional like bro splits. When you start training, like that's kind of what you're into. And then from there, just kind of, I'm not sure how I found it really. Because I've never trained in a CrossFit gym. I've always trained in either a commercial gym or then when we open Compound, obviously I train in my own gym now. But I train on my own a lot of the time, so it's not like we train with people every now and again, but 90% of my own training I do on my own. So I kind of found it through a love of classic strength training, but I didn't want to be that person who was really strong but then couldn't really do anything else. I wanted to be able to do that, but then also feel like you've got a V8 engine under the hood. Like I like the idea of whatever you throw at me, I can do it. Whether that's a 10k race or whether it's a 1RM deadlift or anything in between. So I like that idea, that methodology to start with of being able to do anything and everything, or training to be able to try and do it at least. Maybe you can't do it, but at least you can have the best chance to be able to do it. And I think I found the gymnastic style things as a natural progression of just getting better at the basic stuff. So in order to do that, I almost had to earn the stripes of, can I do strict pull-ups for multiple sets of multiple reps? Like, is my base strength relatively good? Is my coordination there? So have I spent time with a lot of other movements managing those? And then you kind of transfer onto these kind of more higher skill things. So the gymnastic stuff, so like bar muscle ups, ring muscle ups, etc., toes to bar, chest to bar kind of pull-ups, which you have to be able to do strict to an extent. So like strict pull-ups first, and then you can make it dynamic. And I think it was just a natural progression from doing the foundational stuff. And then it was like, right, I can do that. Okay, I'll try that. But it was just trial and error for a lot of it. And I've been doing it like for like competitive, my training program competitively now, or is designed for people who want to compete in it for probably 2.5 years. And it's a 6-day-a-week program. So there's a lot of time spent into it, which therefore you just get better at it because you're spending the time doing it. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then the more time you spend at it, the better you get at it. Then you can increase the volume you do of it. And the more volume you can do initially, you can then start adding it into things like workouts with other things that might be like ergs or barbell work and stuff. And then again, just time spent at that, you get better at understanding where you're good at these things, where it's going to be harder, how you change it. And then it's just skin in the game from doing it constantly for 2.5 to 3 years. And that's not even that long a time compared to some people who've been doing it for like 15 years. So, but I've also got the luxury of owning a gym where I can go in and train at any time, and I can structure my days to maximize my career, but also make sure I have time for my own training. Whereas not everyone's got that luxury. So it feels like it's been quite an accelerated journey, but then it's also, I've got more chance to make it accelerated from the way my life has been created, if you like.
Fitness and Thinking is a podcast and newsletter centered on 6 pillars of fitness: the physical, mental, social, spiritual, emotional, and financial aspects of being. We have had an incredible first 6 months, but if we want to grow, we need those likes and comments and subscribe numbers to go up, and better yet, for you to share what you find interesting. Are you an only child?
No, I've got a brother.
Okay. And did you ever feel a need to spend more or less time with your brother growing up?
We are very close in age, so he's like 20 months younger than me.
Okay.
So we did a lot of stuff together growing up, and we were both very sporty. We both had very similar hobbies. We almost, to an extent, had a similar friendship group. So like, even though he was the year below me at school, a lot of his mates had brothers who were my age as well. So, and we all lived close together, so there was like a massive group. So we spent a lot of time together when we were growing up. And even like now he lives in Cornwall now, but he's the kind of person who I'll not speak to for 3 weeks, and then I could pick up the phone and it'd be like, no, it's changed. We don't need to talk loads because we've got that understanding that we're just solid. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like I'd only ring him if I needed to talk to him. I wouldn't ring him for a chat. But that's the kind of relationship we have, and it's super valuable because it's dependable and there's no pressure. Yeah. And he's my best man. So
it sounds like a dream relationship. And I know with my best mates that it's just that thing of pick up and go. The reason I ask is what I've seen of you with your workouts, you might just do 2 exercises. So I'm trying to think of one that I saw recently. You did weighted dips and maybe you were on the rower and you just did that back to back. And I know that you're capable of doing that. I know that you'll put up some numbers that are ridiculous in terms of work volume, but I also know how bored I would be doing that. I also know how much pain I would be in doing that. It feels to me sometimes with CrossFit type training and, you know, where you're compromised. So this is a phrase that has come up in my coaching. The whole point of Hyrox is that it's compromised running. So you have exhausted the muscles, you've depleted them of glycogen, and then you're supposed to go again. And it is grim. The taste of blood that I had in my mouth the first time I did anywhere near what I might be training for. Yeah. Disgusting. In a way that I've not had with running, or particularly not the half marathon stuff, because you're keeping your heart rate down, it's fairly solid. Is there like a pain kink or pain enjoyment, do you think, to this style of training? And I'm not saying this in a shaming way. I'm trying to understand like the pleasure that people
why people do it.
Yeah.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Like, I think it's really interesting because I think it comes down to why do you decide to do these things? Why do you decide to put yourself through physical discomfort? It's a really hard question to answer, but I think for me personally, in terms of my own training, so I can't answer for anyone else in terms of their training. I know for me personally, the reason why I do it is I enjoy the feeling of the completion of that. Yeah. So knowing that I've intentionally put myself through something that is uncomfortable, that's hard, because I know actually when then in my life something comes up that is out of my control hard, I've built the resilience to be able to deal with something. Like intentionally doing hard things so that when unintentional hard things happen in your life, you've got that kind of resilience within yourself, even if it's not exactly for this thing it is. You just know that you're capable of doing something tough, so that if it gets hard, you're like, right, at least I can give that a go. I think that sits at one part of it, and the other part of it is because, like, my own training is geared towards becoming better for competition. There's always that part in your head that thinks, well, what if you're on a competition floor and this workout comes up and you've not practiced it? You're going to be showing up that your weaknesses are highlighted, and you don't want that. I think that maybe comes back from like all the athletic stuff that I did when I was a child. If on competition day, if you don't turn up, or if something comes up and you're right at the back, your weaknesses are then highlighted, and that's not a great feeling for anyone. No. Especially if you're wanting to go into competition to perform. There's a difference between doing a competition, so say Hyrox, and doing it because you want to do it and it's fun and like you just want to challenge yourself. Yeah. There's a difference between that and then going into something deliberately to perform or hit a number or a certain performance. That mindset is different because you've probably done competitions before. So you then approach it with a different mindset to what you want out of it. Whereas if you've not done one before, a lot of the time you want to do it just because you want to do it. And there's actually quite a nice freedom to that, I think. And then once you've done a lot, you kind of, your expectation of what you want out of yourself is elevated. So then the way you think about what's coming up is different.
Is there then maybe almost a peacefulness for you in what you do?
Yeah, definitely. Like in terms of my training.
Yeah. So there's a book that Beth got for me actually. It's 90 pages max, like a thin book by Herigel, I think. It's The Zen of Archery.
Right, nice.
You come across this?
No.
It's really cool. And it talks about how Japanese Zen archers will spend a year of practice before they even draw the string of their bows. And the idea is that it's not about actually the arrow leaving the bow. It's about who you are as the person who is capable of landing the perfect shot.
Yeah.
And everything that goes into that. The breath work, the composure, the am I able to put in the work needed for the outcome that I want? And I was chatting to an ultra marathon athlete who will put in, potentially hundreds of miles in a month. He probably does even more. To me, he's crazy. He's wild. To everyone else around him, crazy, wild, and you just can't tame him. But when he's out on the road and he's doing these hard things and he chooses to do these hard things, that's where he's most content and most at peace. And he's obviously doing the thing that will put him further forward. And people won't be able to keep up with that. And people will call him all kinds of things because they can't do it. But ultimately for him, that is peace, that is happiness. And I wonder if you can kind of relate to that.
Yeah, definitely can relate to it. I mean, like I kind of said earlier, I do probably 90% of my training is on my own. And I do it because I genuinely enjoy it. Like, yes, there are parts that are really tough. And sometimes I look at the workout that I've got, I'm like, oh my God, that's going to be rough. I'm like, I don't really want to do that. Like, I know that's going to be a dig. But you always do it. I admit, like, there's just part of it because actually, yes, it's going to be hard, but you enjoy how you feel after it. And that kind of consistency of feedback of, I know it's going to be hard, but I'm going to enjoy it after. You do that day on day on day on day. Eventually, you do find a little bit of peace in just those hours that you have of training on your own. I can put my music in. I know what I've got to do. I know it's going to be hard, but there's an enjoyment out of it. And I think maybe also the fact that, and you'll probably resonate as well, as a coach, you spend a lot of time with people. You're talking to people. There's a lot of back and forth conversations. So then actually maybe having an hour and a half to 2 hours where I can just be on my own. I've got this singular thing to focus on. Yeah. There's quite a nice peaceness around that, definitely. And a funny thing to what you were saying about that marathon runner then, or ultra marathon runner, everyone thinks it's crazy, but it's only because they think that they couldn't do it. Whereas the reality is, if you do something enough times and put yourself in those positions enough times, that level of craziness just becomes norm. People don't think they could do it, but if they did it enough times, they'd be able to do it. People self-limit themselves, or they judge others on their own beliefs. Whereas if they actually just did it, they'd probably be able to do it. Like ultra running, and I've done some ultras before, it is hard. But if you just want to complete an ultra, like complete the distance, at first people are like, oh my God, there's no way I could do that. But if they spent 2 years training towards it, I guarantee they'd be like, I can do this. It just comes down to application and consistency over time.
Yeah. And I think that's the spiritual bit that people miss out on. And it's funny, I know that maybe you and I wouldn't be associated, to look at us, with spiritual conversation. But as you say, you put in an hour and a half to 2 hours most days working on yourself, understanding what your limits are, understanding what you can improve. That might just come across as being a bro in a gym. But if you put in that amount of work and you feel your body go through these changes and you do that day after day after day after day, that is part of you. And you said that, being athletic was part of your personality. That this is a sense of self, this is who we are in the world, this is who we are in space, time and all of that, and however insignificant we might be on the universal macrocosmic scale, that is more than just picking things up and putting them down again.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely, I definitely when I was younger saw being athletic as part of the personality. I think as I've got older now, I've maybe been able to separate, like, because I always think, imagine if something happened that I could no longer perform in a sporting sense the way I can now. Would that make me any more or less of a person? I'd like to think no, but maybe part of that is still tied into my personality, and maybe that's something that over time needs to be stretched, because that can't be me. It's something I do, but it can't be me. It's a massive part of what I do, but it can't be the single thing that I attach my identity to, because if that's then removed, what's left? And that's something I think I've found hard, but I'm getting better at. I listened to a really good talk with Johnny Wilkinson yesterday, and he said a very similar thing about rugby. Everyone knows him as England's greatest rugby player, but he no longer plays rugby, so he can't attach that identity to himself. So what's left? Who is he once that's gone? So that's a really interesting thing I found, because I can't be doing the CrossFit to the level I'm doing now. I can't be doing that for the rest of my life, because inevitably there is a peak in any sport. There's a peak, and then you can no longer, when you're 45, you can't maintain the same intensity, the same strength output numbers as when you're 27, 28, 29, 30 to 35. So once that's gone, what's left? I can still train that methodology, but to the intensity that I'm doing it now, potentially not. Yeah. So what's left after that? And I think that's a really interesting place to explore.
So speaking as a coach, how do you work on that?
Not sure yet. Not sure yet, to be honest. I think it's something that I'll work out as it happens, because at the minute, this kind of sphere of bubble that I can be in training, I don't have the responsibility of kids yet. Mm-hmm. I own my own gym. I can dictate a lot of time to training, so everything's all into it. Yeah. That will not be like that forever. So as that happens, it'll be a learning on the go process, I think, and managing how you give energy to that, to the level that you're happy with, but then also give energy to the people around you and the things around you as your life changes. Yeah. I think that's just a process that I'll maybe learn as it happens, rather than something I can go, this is what I'm going to do. Because I could say that and it could not happen. So
there are two things I've observed in sport, kind of in our disciplines, but then also in bodybuilding and football. So you have people like Michael Carrick, now temporarily, but maybe should be the next Manchester United manager. You've got Dorian Yates, is still training and he's coaching. People who can't do, teach, and those who can't teach gym. School of Rock, let's go. Dorian Yates, me, you, if we're all in the same breath, that's amazing. I think that you necessarily have to change the intensity with which you're in the space, but if the space means something to you, you don't have to let it go. And there are great boxing coaches who would have been terrible fighters. But if we didn't have those great coaches, we wouldn't have the great fighters. So I think a pivot, a change of tack that we can all make is to say, okay, cool, I have achieved what I can achieve. How can I help others? And I think that's the energy bit that you're tapping into there.
Yeah.
And something else that you do really well is that you share the quotes that you're thinking on a day.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Stoic philosophy, I think,
in
what you're about, which can be cliche, but I do think something that lasts 2,000 years clearly is speaking to people, and people will read horoscopes. You know, people believe in years of animals and deities that we can't prove. Like, allow people their beliefs, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think something that helps you to live better, that's literally what philosophy is, can be really helpful. I try and stay on top of things as well, but seeing PTs read is a big like source of happiness for me, but also a motivator as well. So the courage to be disliked. I did an episode on last week because a PT in my gym was reading it, and he was really, kind of switched on by these ideas. But I only saw him as somebody pushing a sled on a track.
Yeah.
So then you got the whole thing of don't judge a book by the cover, but what is that person then reading? What's under the cover? And I think tapping into that sort of thing, the thinking behind the fitness, is obviously why we're both here right now.
Like we said, you kind of, as an athlete or your own training, to be a peak, if you're training for competition, you've got a shelf life, because inevitably you can't keep that intensity up forever. So what comes after that? And I think the aim should be to leave the space in a better place than when you found it.
Nice.
Whether that be through things to do with managing the sport or coaching, personal connection, I think you have a responsibility, if you are in that space, and especially if you are a professional in that space, to leave it better than when you found it, or leave people feeling better than when they came in. And I think if that's your mantra, or if that's your North Star, then it makes decisions for the rest of your fitness career much easier. Because you're thinking, is this going to make that person better than when they came in? Or am I leaving the space in general better than when I found it? And if that's your North Star, I think you can go far.
What do you think people get wrong about training generally, but then also functional fitness, and in both directions, or as many directions as you can see it?
What do people get wrong?
Yeah.
I think it very much depends on where you are in your own training, in terms of how long you've been training for. So if let's use an avatar, and we'll say it's someone who's newer to training. I think a lot of the time what people get wrong is they try and do too much too soon. And it then leads to too much fatigue created, not being able to recover from that. And then they associate any kind of gym work, they're like, oh my God, it battered me. When actually really what strength work and what fitness should do is elevate you. And yes, it does that by making us physically fatigued, but we need to do that in a nice incremental amount that allows us to recover and then push the needle on forwards. And I think that's the biggest thing. People jump to doing too much too soon. They can't recover, and then adaptation can't take place, and then they think they're not getting anywhere. That's a big one. Functional fitness wise, I think one of the things that can be definitely kind of misled is an overprescription of the volume of stuff they're doing. Again, we look at kind of who it is based on the individual. Some people can deal with more volume, some people can't. But generally, you look at how much training you're doing per week, how much of that volume is necessary, or how much is kind of junk volume. It takes an expert to be able to see it and pull it away. Also, I think another place people go wrong is finding or using workouts from social media in their own training, not having a structured plan. Just cherry picking things they see. Oh, that looks cool, that looks good, that looks fun. Random training doesn't equal like long-term results. We know that, like it's science 101. Randomness doesn't make us better at it. It's fun and it's novel, but it doesn't make us better. The boring stuff we talked about earlier, long sessions on the rower, doing basic stuff that is a little bit boring, that's what makes you better, which then allows you to have the foundation to do the fun, sexy things, because you've earned the right. Yeah. Whereas if you're always trying to do the fun, sexy things, you don't spend enough time actually getting better. Again, it comes back to you don't feel like you're improving, higher drop-off rate. So I think they're the main things where people can potentially go wrong in their training, as if they're starting out as well.
Yeah. I think that this applies to so many disciplines, it's wild. But we're so hedonistic in our want for, and whether that's social media, whether that's because of processed foods, whether that's because of jobs that are increasingly on screens. If we were going to prescribe very basically to people how they could improve their lives, we'd probably say eat a good diet and move every day. You know, like the secret is just what we should all be doing, but we don't think it's enough, or like you say, it's just not sexy enough.
Yeah.
What do you mean getting the steps in is going to result in the biggest quality of life improvements? You know, I thought it was going to be doing the latest Hyrox, CrossFit, whatever style of training, or, you know, that social media influencer's got 5 million followers. Surely her ab circuit is going to be the thing that improves my life. Not walking.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's something that I'm coming to terms with, and it's something that I can't sell. It's not anything I can put on Instagram, you know?
Yeah, the boring, basic stuff that these people who you aspire to look at and aspire to be, who think are amazing, they probably spend time doing hours and hours of the basic stuff. They just don't see it. You don't see it because it doesn't sell.
No.
Like, no one wants to see a zone 2 session where you sat on the rower for 45 to an hour, and then you go, right, 15 minutes on the rower, 15 minutes on the ski, and you just do that back to back for an hour. No one wants to see that. It's boring, but it makes you better. And then it makes you better at doing the fun, sexy stuff.
Yeah.
How do you sell that? Very hard. Very hard. I think all you can do is educate and let people know that the boring stuff sometimes actually is what gives you the right to do these fun things. But you're right, it's a challenge to sell that because it's boring in nature or boring in nature. I think it actually comes down to your perspective on it. You can see it as boring because it's not grabbing your attention from every single movement, or you can see it as a vital part of what I need to do to get better.
Yeah.
It comes down to how you perceive that, I think.
I'll bring the Yorkshire Moors into the chat for 2 reasons. One is topical, one is my own experience. When I was half marathon training for the first time ever last year, I was back home following 6 months of travelling, and there wasn't much going on socially. My clients all over the world. I didn't have anyone like just there with me. I spent time with my mum and that was lovely, but I needed a way of training that was obviously going to help me get better at a distance I've never run before, which meant that I needed to spend more time running. And I couldn't wait to leave home. You know, I wanted to get to uni, I wanted to get to the bright lights, the big cities.
Yeah.
Ended up in Sheffield, whether that's a big enough city, it was big enough for me. And I always enjoy coming back. When I went back home, that quietness actually suddenly became something that I could be in and live in. And when my runs got longer than 15 kilometers, it was, I would say, life-changing almost. I stopped listening to music on runs. Maybe I would listen to a podcast, but the real moment came, I think, around my first 18-kilometer run. I just did it all without headphones. Maybe I had a gel. It was just me on the road, constant rhythm, just my breathing. It's maybe raining a little bit. The light was changing. You could see the way that the shadows changed over the moors. It was the most peaceful experience I've had on my feet and training. Like, you don't get that in the gym. You know, you don't get that playing paddle. You are just in nature. There weren't any cars around, single tracks, sometimes not even asphalt on the road. It was unreal. And I think until you experience that, those moments, the long, boring stuff will always be long and boring. But when I had that experience, I wanted more of that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not to say that I don't enjoy the company. I love the company, and as I've just described, physically it was probably the most isolated I've been in a while. There was just, like I said, me and my mum, and I'd gone from hostels, you know, where there were 31 other people in the same room. So like I can hang with company, but I was really in those moments of alonement, and probably the happiest I've been in a while. But if you told me that I needed to do 18-kilometer runs as a guy who just lifts weights and does bodybuilding style training, I'm going to lose my muscle, I'm going to be bored, what if my phone dies, you know, like all of these banal worries relative to the transcendental experience of just training and doing the long, boring, and then actually, no, it's not that, but you need to just do it. It's an unteachable thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's an emotional kind of flexibility that you get from it, being able to train in a group and train in a gym, etc. But then being able to just go and do something on your own that's long and hard, and just doing it, I think it gives you a freedom that you maybe don't realise you actually have within you. Like, I remember when I was training for some of the ultras and some of the marathons we've done before, I actually had to adjust my own training. So I actually, when I did train for that ultra, I stopped doing my CrossFit style training. I just did traditional strength stuff, and then I was just running, because that fitted the goal that I had at the time, and then I could come back into other things. And I found a very similar thing to you. I found a lot of peace in going for long runs. And I mean, I'm lucky I live in the countryside, so we're out into the country, out into the moors, and there's just a nice piece about doing something repetitive, smooth. It allows space for your brain to think. You have time to just think about things. And that in itself gives you a freedom, because you're not pulled in every direction. But also it shows you that you can actually do stuff that you probably don't think you can do initially, which that evidence loop of, I can do something tough, I enjoyed it, even though it was hard,
Yeah.
I can do it again, I can do it again. And then it compiles and repeats and gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah. I got to a point where I look forward to those Saturday mornings. And look, I've only done a half marathon. I'm not saying that that's a big thing or a massive thing or whatever, but for me it was huge. And I think for anyone who is thinking that 5K is too big, like, you get your 5K, that's an achievement. You know, you do your 10s, you do your ultras, whatever the distance is, it's the fact that you're doing it that's important.
Yeah, I think what's really important to note as well is that the win feels the same whether it's your first 5K or whether you do an ultramarathon. Everyone thinks the ultramarathon is, you'd feel far superior. You'd be like, oh, that's the best feeling you could imagine. I'm only doing 5K. The feeling is actually the same. The output is just different.
Yeah.
The feeling, I remember when I did my first ever 5K, it felt amazing. When I first ever did like an 8K road race, I was like, oh my God, this is insane. It was the same feeling of happiness as when we did the ultra. None was greater or smaller.
Yeah.
The goalposts just moved. That's the best way I can think about it. Yeah.
The second reason why the moors are relevant, you ready for it? Nobody wants to see Margaret and Jake in Wuthering Heights. They want to see Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi.
Yeah.
You know, and regardless of whether the director has the film close to the source material of the book, that's what people want. They want to see attractive people do naughty things in the Yorkshire Moors. They don't want to see average people do questionable things on some hills.
Yeah.
You know, like, however you frame it, people want to see the flashy version of the thing.
Yeah.
Wuthering Heights is a great book. Go read Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights, in quotation marks, I thought it was actually an all right film.
I've not seen it yet. Would you recommend?
I am torn between a 3.5 star and a 4 star, and I think there's more emotionality to it than you'd expect.
Right.
But you can't always have Margot and Jacob. Sometimes it is Margaret and Jake.
Yeah.
And that's great, but you've just got to trust that they're also going to show you a good time. It's just, it might not be with the same sheen. Yeah. When we think about the other aspect of what people get wrong though, so doing too much too soon was the point that you made. And I think there's that element of fatigue and burnout, and you get to a point where you develop a distaste because you can't recover from it. So when I did that Hyrox complete for the first time, I did a fitness test 4 hours before that, and I did my own training 2 hours before that. I wouldn't recommend to anyone to train 3 times in one day. And my quads were unusable for 4 days after that. But I knew why they were, and I was able to get back to it. I think while I was in pain and I recognised that I couldn't train the same way, like, I pushed back 2 leg sessions because I just couldn't use them. I got to a point where I could accept that I did something hard, I did something ridiculous relative to what I'd normally do, therefore I was going to be in this position. I'm not a bad person, I've not failed, I actually did something that was really challenging. And I think there was only one other PT in the gym went through all of that as well. So no wonder we were wrecked. Come Saturday I was training again, and then I was back on the wheel. Ego, I think, gets in the way. And it's taken me a while to get to that point of acceptance, as frustrating as it was to not do the thing that I love. How have you seen ego get in the way for the type of training that you do and the competitions that you're in?
Great question. I think I think that your ego can be detrimental, but I think you can channel it to be positive as well. So I think when we think about the ego, we think about being egotistical. But the ego, I think, in itself is sometimes our perception of how we do things and how we are as well. With that can come a confidence, which can be very helpful. So there's a very fine line between being confident in your own ability and it tipping over into arrogance and being better, thinking you're better than you are. And it's a very fine line. And I think if you tip one way too much, it's very bad. I think if you lean more towards that, you're tipping over towards that kind of traditional ego way we think about the ego. It highlights itself in very simple ways. Going, oh, do you know what, that last lift felt really good. I'll chuck a 2.5 on. Missing it, and then you go, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Just stick to what's on the programme, stick to the percentages. And I think it's a rush to be better because we want it now.
Yeah.
I want to be better now. I want to be able to do this now. So I think there's an element to that. I think it shows up in sometimes the way you train in terms of the number of training sessions you do. I've seen it before where I felt like I was in a better physical condition than I actually was. So I was doing too many double days. So like a session in the morning, session in the afternoon. And then I actually couldn't recover. And I did that for 2 weeks. And then I was like, none of my numbers have gone up. My belief in how physically capable I was of this was higher than my actual reality. So that was a bit of a check, a bit of an ego check. But then at the same time, you flip it, the ego can be really helpful because it can actually make you put yourself in positions that you would, if you're too reservative, you wouldn't be in, because you back yourself to do something.
Yeah.
Now that can, again, like we said, it's a fine line between arrogance and confidence. I think there is a very fine line, and the same thing with your ego. You can become egotistical to believe you are better than you are, but also that belief in how good you are can put you in some really good places, and it can make you back yourself to do something that you maybe didn't think you could. So I think it shows up in two ways, rather than just the traditional way we think of ego as being a bad thing. It can be a very bad thing, but it can also be helpful.
Yeah.
Distinguishing the two is quite hard. I think that's a skill that you refine over years and years and years of training. I don't think it's something you either have or don't have. I think it's refined over time. And like we talked about, skin in the game, just consistency of doing something. You get better at it and understanding it.
Do you think there's an element of us going out too soon? Because I blew up in my last 10K, in part because I was surrounded by people also going too quickly.
Yeah.
And as you describe, of doing too many doubles in a week, we're trying to get results that should take this time in this amount of time. And again, it's that burnout, it's that fatigue, it's thinking that we're capable of more than we are without having the proof that we're capable of what we're trying to do. A phrase I really like is confidence through competence.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. And it's that, no, you can do that because you have shown over time that you can do that. When you're in competition, and I hope next time I'm in competition, if I've got a game plan, that there's something noble in sticking to the plan, particularly when it's individual and you're not dependent on reaction times of other people or other people being better slept or fed or whatever. A lot of competition is just ourselves against ourselves. So if you're trying to prove to yourself that you are better than last time and your plan's gotten you to this point, why wouldn't you just stick to the plan for the race or for the event, you know? And I 100% should have done that on the 10K. It turned out that it was all uphill in the first half, and I'd been training downhill in the first. So I got it completely wrong, you know, for the terrain, and you know that sometimes you don't know the course until you're there. But had I just kept my pacing and my breathing similar for the first half, then the second half would have been much better, you know.
But do you not think sometimes I agree? I think, but I think they're the massive learning curves that actually make us better next time. So the fact that happened to you, if you are in a situation like that again, you know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
You won't go out too fast because you know how that felt. And sometimes you can only learn these lessons the hard way, and you go, shit, that did not feel good. So I think sometimes we have to go through that process to then be able to come out the other side and be like, right, I'm now more fitness aware, or fitness IQ is increased by understanding that I don't need to go out too hot because this happened last time and that was the end result. If I want this result, I need to change something. But you almost got to go through those to get better. Because if everything was perfect all the time, well, it physically can't be. There's inevitably going to be times where the challenge you maybe set yourself, you don't quite approach it in the way that would be perfect. But actually, you arguably probably learn more from it than if you did it perfectly. Because if everything was perfect, you'd never learn anything. So I think sometimes.
Here's a point for you then. You and I have made mistakes that we've learned from, and sometimes those mistakes have resulted maybe in setbacks, injuries, fatigue leading to illness that becomes more drawn out, maybe a sense of, I'm not as good as I was, and turning that inwards, and it manifests in other ways. And I know for me that when I've been down on myself physically, I've been harder work in relationships, for instance. And if that's been tied with me pulling my back because I added another 2.5, all of that stems from me pushing for more than I had evidence of. But I also know now that when I train, I'm not going to do those same things again. The lessons learned. We're coaches. We can prevent people from those moments.
Yeah.
What level of responsibility do we have to allow people to make mistakes? What's the kind of balance, do you think, that we kind of support people with for failure and for progression?
Yeah. That, I think, is the absolute sweet spot in coaching, is creating an environment that is safe enough for them to make mistakes and learn, because we know mistakes are a vital part of learning. Yeah. Is that mistake they're going to make going to be not too costly? Is that mistake going to be too big? We can't let them do that. Is it going to be a mistake where actually they'll learn loads from it, and it actually, in the long term, it maybe resets them back a little bit, but in the long term, it pushes them further? We have to create that space and safety for that to happen. And then that leads them to become more autonomous and learn more. If we are just dictatorial in terms of do this, do this, do this, do this, and we're protecting people from not making those mistakes, I don't think we do our job as a coach. I think you're an instructor then. I think that the coach is a relationship. So you have to allow them to make mistakes, but in a way that makes them better. That's the sweet spot, and it's safety. Is that environment, and is the mistake not too big? If it's a small mistake, perfect, we need them. If it's a big one, we need to mitigate that to make sure that they don't then be disheartened. Because what we can do is we can teach people the lessons learned from these small mistakes, so that then when it arises again, or a situation arises again that's like that, they go, I did that last time, I'll probably change it. But that's them making that decision. And I think good coaching makes members or clients more autonomous to be able to make those decisions, and then you can have a back and forth rather than just saying this is what I want you to do to make this lift, etc. That might happen at the first bit when you're coaching someone at the start of the relationship, but over time that has to change. So making the environment safe for them to make small mistakes to be able to learn from is key.
Why do you coach?
I think I've always enjoyed having a physical job is something I always wanted. I think I enjoy interperson connection, and having that throughout my day is massive. I would struggle I really enjoy time on my own as well. I really enjoy time on my own and I value it, but I would struggle to have a job that required me to do that all the time. It comes with a social battery that eventually gets drained, but the connection between people I find really, really interesting. And the impact you can have on someone even if it's just something small, can make a massive difference. One of the coaches I have now at Compound, she used to be my she used to be a one-to-one a long time ago. And I asked her a very similar question. I was like, when she told me she wanted to get into coaching, I was like, what is it that made you want to get into coaching? And she told me, she was like, I saw what you did as a coach for me. I want to be able to do that for someone else. And I found that really powerful. And I think when I've had coaches or like people who do my programs, it's helped me massively. So it comes back to, am I going to leave the industry in a better place than I found it? If I can help people with whatever remit of fitness it is, I think that's my responsibility. To leave the space better than where I found it and foster positive relationships and improve people's view of themselves through fitness as a vessel. Yes, they've got to do work themselves, but that can be a vessel for it. I think that's one of the reasons why I coach.
What are you most excited about in maybe the year ahead or for your business? Where are you going from here?
Personally, I've got a very busy year. I'm getting married, we're going on honeymoon. It's all very exciting. And there's a lot to look forward to there. I mean, it's going to be a mega day. In terms of business, we're moving in a really nice direction. I would like now to be in a position where we are taking on more coaches. We can access more people and they can train through our methodology, but also have access to good coaching. I think, and you'll know through this in the fitness industry, there's a lot of bad PTs out there. There's also some amazing ones. That gap needs to be made smaller. We can't have that disparity. We need the level of coaching to be much higher. And I think that's where coaches in the industry, we step up and provide great examples of great coaching and make that the standard, rather than there being someone here and there being someone here. That gap needs closing. I think that's our responsibility. So as a business, I think that's what we do. We keep pushing towards that and making our product as the best it can be to service the people who are there in the best way possible, because they're the reason why we coach. So it needs to service them.
Yeah. The branding, the name really frustrates me, James. I hate how good it is. 3 levels it works for Compound. Obviously, you have the space that you work in as the Compound. You have the type of training, which is multi-joint and, working different muscle groups, different movements, compound movements, and then also the idea that it is being a little bit better each day. Yeah, you got that?
I can't take full credit for that. I can't take full credit for that. That was one of my, the guy who I used to live with, Ollie, shout out. He helped me design the logo.
Nice.
And he kind of, we hashed out like what I wanted and things like that, but he brought that to life.
Okay.
So I can't take all the credit for that.
Fair.
But it does work on 3 levels, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah. Where would you want to send people from here? So obviously Compound Coaching, at Compound Coaching on Instagram.
Yeah. CMPND Coaching on Instagram, yeah. And then through there you can follow all socials on that.
Amazing. Is there anything we've missed or anything that you'd want to get into?
No, I think it's been great. I think the chats have been so in depth. You've made me ponder for quite a few things, which is nice because day to day, not many people get to spend time in that kind of deeper level of thought, which is very refreshing to do. I would say, in terms of reading, some things that have really helped me over the years. One, The Daily Stoic, which is a book, 1 page a day. Starts off with a paragraph from one of the Stoics, so it might be Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, etc. And then the author, Ryan Holiday, goes into a bit of a depiction on how that can impact us on our modern day life. And the lessons are still very transferable. That made a massive difference into how I thought about things, situations, but also myself. So if that's something maybe people are struggling with, that's a very good place I found to start. And I'm also reading a book at the minute called Legacy, which is about the New Zealand All Blacks and about how better people make better All Blacks. So better people make better coaches, better leaders, better managers, whatever it is in whatever remit of life you do. Better people make better insert job title.
Yeah.
So they're two things I'm really enjoying at the minute.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been awesome, and it's nice to have this outlet to be able to talk about things in a greater detail, because social media, you have a small format to be able to catch attention. Longer format stuff like this is really important because it allows people to get a better feel for maybe the coaching industry as a whole or the functional fitness space as a whole. I think it's really important.
No, appreciate making the time.
No, thank you for having me. It's been brilliant.
We have no sponsors at the moment. I'm not looking for a penny, cent or peso from you, just for your support. If you like what we're up to, please do leave a 5-star review where you can. Please do leave a comment saying what you like, saying what you change, saying what it is that you do differently, and 100% share it with your friends, family, partners, workmates, whoever needs to hear the ideas that we're going to explore through this year and have already explored. Share it with them.